Hey everyone, and welcome to Chapter 9, The Law of the Ladder. I hope each of you are enjoying reading this book, whether it's your first time or maybe your second or third time. I believe this is the third time that I've read the 15 Laws. That you're thoroughly enjoying the process, right? Because everything is a process. And you're treating this book differently than you treat most books. I learned just in this past year about followership, and to really understand books, you could take one book and read it and study it your whole life. Some people are able to take one sentence and study that sentence and really dig and think and reflect upon that, where a lot of people, they just eat and eat and eat and consume more and more books and more information. The problem with that is the more information you consume, the more difficult that is to put into practice, right? Do you ever notice people that they have a lot of knowledge about things, but they're not very successful, or they don't always, their walk doesn't match their talk? So sometimes you should just let them know, hey, why don't you follow what you read? And that's what hopefully you're able to do with this 15 Laws of Invaluable Growth. So this particular chapter, the Law of the Ladder, character growth determines the height of your personal growth. It's amazing when I was thinking through all of these chapters and how, whoever taught them just kind of happened by chance. I always find that when you read something, like, boy, it's like the author's speaking to me. And that's called awareness. And it's not because you're like, oh, this chapter is perfect for me to teach. It's just that your awareness in this chapter is bringing out those reflections. And that's exactly what I was thinking when I was reading the Law of the Ladder again and taking my notes and thinking through it. So I'm going to focus on just a couple of sentences here, and the first one is about values, right? The first question: what values, personal traits, or characteristics do you seek and admire in other people? If you remember, John asked us to do that earlier, was to talk about when you're creating your inner circle. To what values and personal traits or characteristics do you seek or admire? And those, you can't attract what you don't have in yourself, right? So think about those characteristic tracks of, if you think of the rungs of the ladder, if each rung is one of those trait or characteristics that you admire, it's really important when you're going through this chapter and growth process in the Law of the Ladder. And so I'm going to think about some particular traits. I'm going to talk about some traits and a particular time in my life where this Law of the Ladder made sense to me. And it was my time from 2003 to 2006. I was a special ed teacher in New Hanover County schools. And at the time, sorry for the construction, the whole house is being rebuilt. At the time, I was applying for many central office jobs in special education. I had only taught 4 years. I just compiled my national boards. I had a lot of talent as a teacher. My head was bigger than the screen. I had a giant ego. It's not as big as it is now, but it was a different big back then. And so I remember applying for all of these jobs, and every time I applied, I got a response as, boy, you were right there. And even the principal of the current school would say, oh, we almost lost you. Nothing would infuriate me more than coming in second. And so as I was reflecting upon the Law of the Ladder here and thinking about that time in 2003, what was my personal life like? I was a heavy drinker. I had just got married, but I wasn't, married mentally. I was a recovering I was still a heavy gambling addict. Those were my, final 3 years. And so character-wise, I wasn't a very good human being. I wasn't good to family. I wasn't good to my spouse. I wasn't great to my friends. It was really all about me. And I remember some of those interviews being able to really talk about my flaws in life, you know, but I couldn't always talk about my strengths, which was weird. So anyway, and I was definitely applying for jobs that were above my skill level, again. But so as I thought about that, I was like, so what was the difference? And the difference was Gamblers Anonymous. In February of 2006, the 12th, I placed my last bet, and within 60 days of that, maybe 45 days, I was in a Gamblers Anonymous program that specifically taught character, right? It had character components, it had accountability components. It was a mastermind group, right? It was nothing different than what we're doing, except it was face-to-face. And you had a sponsor, right, who's basically your mentor, and someone to hold you accountable, someone to call you every day to make sure you were making good decisions. So when I look at this quote by John, it says, or by Norman Schwarzkopf, that John puts in the book, 99% of our failures are because of our character. That really, really hit me. I was like, wow, I wasn't not getting those jobs because someone else necessarily, you know, was out to get me. I was not I didn't have good character, right? I had characters, not, you know, it's about character, not capacity. So I had the capacity to do certain roles, but I didn't have the character to fulfill these roles. It was coming out, obviously. For, you know, people to give me kudos but say, sorry you didn't get the job, that's because I just wasn't, I didn't have very strong character traits, right? So when you think about the rungs of your ladder, what we do or neglect to do in privacy impacts who we are, right? What we do or neglect to do in the privacy of our daily lives impacts who we are. And remember, we're not what we want in life. We are who we are in life. There is no good or bad, there just is. And it's your attitude based upon your character that determines that is and how you're going to approach that is. I want to cut through, because I've already spent a lot of time on this, but if you go into your books on page 145 at the very bottom, John says, I'm going to read right from the book. We reap what we sow. What we do or neglect in the privacy of our daily lives impacts who we are. If you neglect your heart, mind, and soul, it changes who you are on the outside as well as on the inside. And that's the difference for me, right? That sentence right there was the difference for me. If I think about the last 10 years of my life, right, this February will be 11 years for me without gambling. If I think about the last 11 years, what I've achieved personally and professionally, I mean, it's a very small scale, but it just speaks to exactly what this chapter is talking about. Right? People gave me opportunity, and I was able to flourish because they trusted me. Right? I built trust. I learned how to connect with people. I was honest. I was trustworthy. I was writing down my rungs. You can see my ladder. Let's see. It's kind of hard to read because it's backwards and upside down, and my writing's atrocious. But at the foundation of my ladder is trust. In order to gain trust, you have to have humility, and you have to respect other people. You have to be responsible. Right? When you mess up, you fess up. You have to care for others. Be honest. Commitment. So these are the rungs of the ladder that I'm currently working on and continue to build. So what's on your rungs of the ladder? Like what makes up your rungs? On page 149, this is great because everybody uses this. Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates. John says, unlike what Tom Hanks said as Forrest Gump, life's not a box of chocolates, it's more like a jar of jalapenos. What we do today might burn our butts tomorrow. See, I'm just one step away from stupid again, right? I don't share anything to impress you, but to impress upon you that anything you believe you can or can't do, you're right. So if you want to achieve more and be more, you got to see more and you got to do more. But always remember, you're one step away from stupid and going right back to where you were. And that's why that Gamblers Anonymous, that group, that accountability group, that mastermind gave me the skills and it wrapped around me. And that's why it's important to have an accountability partnership, just like this mastermind group. So I want to turn your attention page 154, and we're going to wrap up. So these are applying the law of the ladder in your life, and I hope that you're taking the time at the end of every chapter and just reflecting and writing out responses. But I love this. I'm going to use this. Compare how much you spent in the last 12 months on clothing, jewelry, accessories, and so on, versus how much you spent on books, conferences, and personal or professional development. Why do more people spend more time planning their vacations than they spend planning their lives? A vacation's a week or a weekend. Your life could be 100 years. It's really, really important, right? If your assessment reveals more of an outward focus than an inward focus, then determine how to shift your focus by adding time, money, and attention to the things that will make you grow, even if they do not show. That's my challenge to you. Right? It's my challenge to you through this chapter, is to get through these questions. Go back to your timeline of awareness, because that's when you're going to find the golden nuggets, and you're going to see where your rungs of the ladder, your rungs of your character ladder, are starting to design the life that you aim to have. Thank you.